So then the question is, where are we going? We've been in this energy crisis for 16 years. So hopefully somebody somewhere has woken up and said that it's going to get better at some point. Now this is unfortunately not good news. This is Eskom's energy availability factor. So it's quite simple. A coal-fired plant has a certain amount of time that it actually runs, a certain amount of units, and every now and then a unit trips or it goes off for maintenance. The international standard is you should try to aim for 70 to 75% availability factor for a power plant. South Africa had quite good energy availability factor in the 2012. We managed, I think, 80%. We were exceptional in the early 2000s. Eskom won prizes for how well they ran their coal fleet. But this has rapidly declined. Now, this is out of Eskom's own operational statistics. It has rapidly declined to 62% last year. This year, we're below 50% for most of the year, which means we've got 40,000 megawatt installed coal-fired generation, but at any given time, only about 20,000 megawatt of that is actually generating power. The rest is unplanned maintenance. So they've got 3,000 megawatt on planned maintenance, and then we're now sitting at 16,000 unplanned maintenance, which means a unit tripped, either it got sabotaged or something happened, and it's not online anymore. Now this is quite simply an impossible situation to manage if you're Eskom. The only way out of this is you need to build more power plants, but the two newest power plants are the worst offenders in energy availability factor. Medupi and Kusile are truly badly designed. We've now lost 3 units at I think it's Medupi, where the chimney stack wasn't designed correctly and they had to put on decarbonizing chutes, and this created a residue that got too heavy, and then the chimney stack collapsed, which means South Africa has lost 2,500 megawatts of generating capacity just from bad design. And now we've taken Kuiberg offline as well for one of the reactors for another 1,000 megawatt. So that's why we're in this dire situation of load shedding now. We've got 3,500 megawatt on planned maintenance, which should be on planned maintenance, but then the fun starts. We've been in this space for a while, and several of these power plants have suddenly developed a profile that you would never associate with a coal plant. It's the weirdest situation. Things that just catch fire that shouldn't catch fire. Our members have reported several instances at Tutuka specifically. At Tutuka, the power plant manager, for interest sake, has to walk around with a bulletproof vest, so it's become rough there. But you would have a situation where the power plant, a unit trips, and then when they find the fault, it's one cable that has been cut, but it's in the middle of a whole bunch of cables, like 10, 12. And that means it's somebody who has access, who has knowledge, who knows exactly which cable to cut to trip that unit. And this is happening with scary frequency, where the moment the country goes into a bit of pressure, you're going to stage 2 or stage 3 load shedding, suddenly 3 or 4 units would trip at other power stations without any reason. Being a gearbox would seize because the oil has been drained. They just simply hit a little looking glass with a hammer, and then the oil drains out of the gearbox and it seizes 8 hours later when you're not on shift anymore. Or the newest thing that would happen is they would you've got a little drip on the black start, on the black start oil for the power generator, and then you would put a little lid that fills up in about 4 to 5 hours, and when that trips, it spills oil onto the electrical wire that is exposed, and that means the whole thing catches fire, but it happens 5 hours later. So suddenly country would go into pressure on the afternoon, and then they would ensure that during the evening peak 3 or 4 units more due to sabotage get tripped suddenly, and then we're going into stage 6, and that creates a lot of repercussions then, obviously. So this energy availability factor is not simply due to old power plants, it's due to bad design of Medupi and Kusile, and it's due to sabotage in several instances, and the sabotage is coming from within.
Who is responsible for the design faults and for the sabotages? Do you know that?
Now I need to tiptoe past libel. So the design faults is Hitachi Power Africa and they got the tender through Chancellor House, and this actually been in America found to be a corrupt tender, but in South Africa for some weird reason we have not acted on that at all. But the other thing is that when government was warned in 1998 that they need to design a power station and we need to build new ones, they simply ignored this, and then they hastily rushed it through within a year or two. with designs that do not make a lot of sense, that do not work, and that constantly break. And that is where we are. Regarding the sabotage, we've had several arrests, but what is curious is that the sabotage seems to be coordinated. If you've got sabotage on one site, that you can just say it's somebody acting on their own. But when 3 or 4 sites get sabotaged at the exact same time in different geographical areas in the country, that would indicate that somewhere somebody is giving a command for this to be sabotaged. And that usually falls when the pressure would be the worst. So I don't think it's any coincidence that after Mr. Director is gone, it suddenly got a lot better.
Those guys who were arrested, who they can...
No, they go quite high up. We can't state names because then I'm going to spend the night in prison. But what I can state is that nowhere in the world does organized crime operate at this level without extensive government involvement and protection. And that is exactly what we're seeing here, with government officials at the very highest levels being intricately involved in defrauding Eskom, as well as then actively sabotaging to get rid of Mr. De Ruyter and Mr. Oberholzer, who has stopped billions of rands of fraudulent tenders. But the other part is to plain simply get bogus repair contracts with bogus hours that they're then reselling to Eskom. In some of these sites, the same part has been sold to Eskom more than 200 times. So the modus operandi, I don't know if you've read about Daily Maverick, but we've now heard from our members way more extensively the way it works. You would start a shell company, or start 6 shell companies with the same director who would own all 6, and they would all 6 get on Eskom's list of preferred suppliers. Then a piece of machinery would suddenly break or go missing. But go missing means they literally throw a tarp over it and it's gone. And your inventory controller says, well, we need a new one. So they would order it. And then 6 companies on the preferred supplier list, which all have the same director, would tender within 5% of one another, but almost 40 to 50% more expensive than should be. One of these 6 with the same director would get the tender. The truck would show up empty at the gate. A security guard who gets paid something would sign off that the truck arrived. The inventory controller would sign off that the truck arrived and was offloaded, and then they would take the top off the piece of machinery and would say, here it is. So they've literally, some of these things, I know one of our members told us, this thing has been sold more than 200 times. And the problem with that is, the paper trail is fine. You can't get them on the paper trail at all. But these companies are writing between 20 and 30 million rand worth of procurement orders per power station. So we're looking at upwards of R1 billion that is just being siphoned every month from Eskom. That's how you've got situations of people who, one guy was stealing more than 100 million rand worth of oil from an Eskom power station every month. And then he got arrested after Mr. De Ruyter let the right policeman know, and the next day he was released on 500 rand bail, and he's been gone after that. We don't know where he went. But that means no organized crime facility can operate at this level without one extensive government involvement. We know exactly who the people are, and we know them quite well. Several of them we've hit in negotiations. There are trade union officials, there are ANC elected officials, but the other part is government protection, which means you've got several police officers, unfortunately, especially in Mpumalanga, who are also in on this. And then we get, on the other hand, we've got members in the SAPS who would suddenly phone us with that they had the weirdest phone call from a general. They pulled a truck over which was carrying nothing, and it was suspicious, and then they got told to just leave it immediately, and they did that. So we're looking at, unfortunately, an extensive integrated situation.